Welcome to our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe to receive the latest notifications. Today, I will introduce you to a true story about a disaster. Hollow ear, the strange illness that made me hear the dead. Warsaw, Poland, March 9th, 2025. My name is Katarzyna Nowak, 32 years old, a freelance journalist living in the old Praga district of Warsaw. I have never believed in ghosts, spirits, or anything that cannot be explained by science. But now, as I sit in my tiny apartment with the wind howling through the old window frames, I am no longer so sure. Everything began 3 months ago when I woke up with a strange sensation in my right ear, as if there was an empty cavity, a hollow space where sound no longer reached in the usual way. I thought it was just an ear infection, a common issue during the harsh Polish winter. I visited a doctor at Szpital Praski, an old hospital just a few blocks from my home. Dr. Jan Kowalski, a middle-aged man with round glasses and a curt demeanor, examined my ear through a medical microscope. He frowned, mumbling something about a normal eardrum and no signs of infection. He prescribed me anti-inflammatory medication and told me to rest. But I knew something was wrong. The noise in my ear wasn't the usual ringing. It was deeper, more resonant, like an echo from a distant cave. That night, lying in my single bed with the dim streetlight filtering through the curtains, I heard it for the first time. Not the sound of traffic on Puławska Street, nor the arguments of the couple next door through the thin walls. It was a voice, weak, trembling, yet unmistakable. "Katarzyna, help me." The voice echoed in my head, not from outside, but as if it came from the hollow cavity inside my ear. I bolted upright, my heart pounding, scanning the empty room. There was no one, just me in the darkness. I tried to convince myself it was just a hallucination, the result of stress from meeting deadlines for the local newspaper. But the voice didn't stop. The next night, it returned, clearer this time. "Katarzyna, I'm so cold. It's so cold down here." I switched on the light, checking every corner of my apartment, even opening my wardrobe to make sure no one was hiding inside. But no, the voice persisted, a whisper piercing through my skull, cold and desperate. I started keeping notes. As a journalist, I had the habit of documenting anything unusual. In my notebook, I wrote, December 15th, 2024, first voice, female, approximately 40-50 years old, Polish, pleading for help. I didn't know why I was doing this, but I felt the need to understand what was happening. I searched the internet for similar symptoms: tinnitus, auditory hallucinations, psychiatric disorders. Nothing matched perfectly. Medical articles about tinnitus only described ringing or buzzing sounds, not clear, distinct voices like the ones I was hearing. A week later, things got worse. I was sitting in Kukurnia Pawłowicz, a cafe on Zamkowska Street where I often worked on my articles, when a new voice emerged. This time it was a man's voice, hoarse and angry. "They killed me, right here, under the stairs." I jolted, knocking over my coffee onto my laptop keyboard. The people around me stared at me in confusion, but I didn't care. A chill ran down my spine as if someone had just exhaled icy breath into my ear. I looked down at the floor, where a small staircase led to the cafe's basement. I had never noticed it before. I asked the owner of the restaurant, an elderly woman named Helena, about the basement. She scoffed, saying it was just a storage space that no one had entered for years. But her eyes flickered with unease, as if I had touched upon a secret she didn't want to acknowledge. I decided not to press further, but the voice in my ear echoed throughout the entire day. "Under the stairs, they buried me." I began to doubt my own mind. I went to see a psychiatrist in Krakow, Dr. Anna Wiśniewska, renowned for her research on hallucination disorders. After an hour of conversation, she concluded that I was not schizophrenic or suffering from any similar condition. It could be work-related stress, she said, or a rare form of tinnitus causing auditory hallucinations. "I'll refer you to a neurologist in Warsaw." I left her office with a prescription for sedatives and a growing sense of unease. But then an event changed everything. On Christmas Eve, as I was walking across Świętokrzyski Bridge, a bridge spanning the Vistula River, I heard another voice. This time it was a child, clear but filled with pain. "Mom, the water is so cold. Help me." I stopped in the middle of the bridge, looking down at the dark river below. The wind howled, blending with the whisper in my ear, and for the first time it was more than just sound, it was an image. In my mind, I saw the face of a little girl, her wet blonde hair clinging to her cheeks, her blue eyes wide with terror. I didn't know who she was, but I felt her desperation as if it were my own. I went home and searched online. Within minutes, I discovered a case from 10 years ago. On December 24th, 2015, a 7-year-old girl named Zofia Kowalczyk fell into the Vistula River from Świętokrzyski Bridge and drowned. No one knew exactly what had happened, an accident or something intentional. The case was quickly forgotten, but the photograph of Zofia in old news articles matched the image in my head exactly. That was when I realized I wasn't crazy. I was hearing the voices of the dead. After discovering Zofia Kowalczyk, I could no longer sleep. I sat in my old armchair in the living room, my notebook open before me, my hands trembling as I wrote down every detail. Zofia, 7 years old, drowned, Świętokrzyski Bridge, December 24th, 2015. Child's voice calling for her mother. I stared at the words, trying to find a rational explanation, but there was none. I didn't know Zofia, had never read about her case before, so why did I see her face and hear her voice as if she were right next to me? I decided to do something. As a journalist, I was used to digging for the truth, no matter how unsettling it was. I opened my laptop and searched for more information about Zofia's drowning. The old articles didn't say much, just brief reports of a tragic accident on Christmas Eve. No suspicions of foul play, no deeper investigation. But one detail caught my attention. Zofia's mother, Maria Kowalczyk, disappeared shortly after the incident. Some believed she had taken her own life out of grief, but no body was ever found. I wrote down Maria Kowalczyk's name and planned to investigate further. But before I could do anything, Zofia's voice returned, this time more urgent. Mom isn't here. Mom went far away. Find her for me. I gripped the armrest of my chair, trying to stay calm. What did "went far away" mean? Was Maria dead, or was she still alive somewhere? And why had Zofia chosen me? The next day, I went to the National Library of Poland on Aleja Niepodległości Street to search old records. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I needed clues. As I flipped through newspapers from 2015, I heard another voice, not Zofia's this time. This one belonged to a man, deep and weary. They took everything. There's nothing left down there. I looked up, scanning the quiet library. A few students were buried in their books, and an elderly librarian pushed a cart of books in the distance. No one was paying attention to me. But I knew that voice hadn't come from them. It had echoed from the hollow depths of my ear. I quickly wrote in my notebook, December 26th, 2024, male voice, unknown identity, talking about they took everything. I started to wonder if these voices were connected. Zofia wanted me to find her mother, and now this man was talking about something being taken. What did it mean? I needed more data. Krakow, Poland, December 28th, 2024. I decided to leave Warsaw for a while to meet Dr. Michał Górski, the neurologist Dr. Wiśniewska had referred me to. He worked at Jagiellonian University Hospital in Krakow, one of Poland's leading medical institutions. On the train from Warsaw to Krakow, I tried to sleep, but the whispers didn't stop. Sometimes it was Zofia, sometimes the man, and other times voices I couldn't recognize, a choir of despair echoing in my head. Dr. Górski, a tall, gaunt man with silver hair and sharp eyes, welcomed me into his office when I arrived at the hospital. I told him everything, the ringing in my ears, the voices, the visions of Zofia. He listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting something down on his clipboard. When I finished, he ordered a series of tests, an MRI scan, an EEG, and a hearing assessment. I sat inside the MRI machine as it roared around me, but it couldn't drown out Zofia's voice. You're close to mother. You're getting closer. The test results came back the next day. Dr. Górski called me into his office, his expression more serious than I had expected. Ms. Nowak, he said slowly, I found nothing abnormal in your brain or ears. Your eardrums, auditory nerves, everything is perfectly normal. But there is something strange. In your EEG results, we detected unusual brain waves in the temporal lobe when you reported hearing the voices. It's as if you're receiving a signal from an external source. A signal? I asked, a chill running down my spine. What do you mean? He sighed and set his pen down. I'm not sure. This isn't my area of expertise, but if I had to make a hypothesis, I would say that you may be sensitive to a type of sound wave or frequency that normal people cannot hear. There have been studies on this phenomenon, but they're rare and unproven. I left the hospital with more questions than answers. If this wasn't a medical condition, then what was it? I began to suspect that my hollow ear wasn't an illness at all, but something else. Prague, Czech Republic, January 3rd, 2025. A week later, I received an email from a stranger. The sender introduced himself as Pavel Novak, an independent researcher in Prague, claiming he had come across my anonymous post on a medical forum. He wrote, "You're not the only one. I've encountered 3 similar cases in the past 20 years. Meet me in Prague if you want to know the truth." I didn't think twice. I bought a night train ticket from Krakow to Prague, carrying only my notebook and a fragile hope. When I arrived in Prague, I met Pavel in a small beer hall called U Fleku on Kremencova Street. He was a short man in his 60s, with piercing eyes and a voice roughened by years of smoking. "You hear the dead, don't you?" he asked the moment I sat down, skipping any formalities. I nodded, startled by his bluntness. "How do you know?" Pavel scoffed, taking a sip of his dark beer. "Because I've met them. People like you. In old Slavic folklore, they call it hollow ear, a curse or a gift depending on how you see it. Those afflicted can hear the voices of restless spirits." My heartbeat quickened. "Folklore? So it's not an illness?" "Not exactly," he said, lowering his voice. "It's connected to unnatural deaths, souls trapped because they haven't moved on. But there's a catch. Not everyone can hear them, only those who have been close to death themselves." I frowned, trying to recall. I've never had a near-death experience. I've lived an ordinary life, no accidents, no serious illness. Pavel leaned forward, locking eyes with me. "Are you sure? Think carefully. A fall down the stairs, a high fever as a child, a moment when you felt like you stopped breathing." I was about to dismiss it when a vague memory surfaced. I was 5 years old at my grandmother's house near the Białowieża forest. I had a terrible fever, so severe that my mother once told me the doctor thought I wouldn't survive. I vaguely remember a cold sensation, as if I were drifting away somewhere, but I had never considered it near death. "Maybe," I said, my voice trembling, "but why now? Why not back then?" Pavel shrugged. "Who knows? Maybe you touched something, a place, an object, a memory, that awakened it. Now you're stuck with them." "Them?" I asked. "The dead," he replied, as if it were obvious, "and they won't stop calling you until you help them, or until you go insane." After meeting Pavel, I felt like I had stepped into a world I didn't want to belong to. He handed me an old file, yellowed pages, handwritten in Czech and Polish, documenting people who had experienced the hollow ear throughout history. A man in Krakow in 1897 heard the cries of victims who had died in a fire. A girl in Lviv in 1923 was haunted by the voices of soldiers who had perished in World War I. They all had one thing in common. They had survived a near-death experience, and afterward, they became a bridge for restless souls. Pavel told me that the only way to escape the voices was to free them, find out what they wanted and fulfill it. But be careful, he warned. Once you start, you won't be able to stop. They'll pull you in deeper. I didn't want to believe him, but I had no other choice. Zofia's voice was growing stronger, and other voices had begun to overlap, making my head pound. I returned to Warsaw the next day, bringing Pavel's file with me and determined to find Zofia's mother, Maria Kowalczyk. I started by reaching out to an old colleague, Marek Szymański, an investigative journalist who had worked for Gazeta Wyborcza. Marek had an extensive network of sources throughout Poland, and I hoped he could help me. We met at Chui Barbarzyńca Cafe on Dobra Street. Marek, with his messy hair and thick glasses, looked at me skeptically as I told my story. "Katarzyna, are you sure you're not just overstressed?" he asked, but I shook my head and pushed Pavel's file across the table. He flipped through a few pages, then frowned. "All right, let's say I believe you. Maria Kowalczyk, huh?" I remember that case. There were rumors she didn't commit suicide but fled to Germany after her daughter's death. No one investigated further because the police ruled it an accident. "Germany?" I asked, feeling my heart pound faster. "Can you find out more?" Marek shrugged. "I'll try, but if she's still alive, it won't be easy. Do you have any leads?" I told him what Zofia had said. Mom went far away. Marek nodded, jotting something down on his phone, then promised to contact me if he found anything. Meanwhile, I decided to return to the Świętokrzyski Bridge where Zofia had died to look for more clues.